Good afternoon, all SAAFoST members joining us for the SAAFoST SACNASP webinar. We welcome you. There are a few housekeeping notes before we begin. All attendees will notice that you are muted, so you won't be able to speak. We will have some time later on during the Q&A session where you will have the opportunity to raise your hand. To do that, what you need to do is on your dashboard, you'll see a small little hand, which you will just click on, and we will then manage it from the organizer's point of view of unmuting you to ask your question and muting you again once you've actually asked your question for the answer back from SACNASP. Without any further ado, let's get started. Please sit back and enjoy this webinar. I'd like to hand you over to Dr. Gerda Botha, Chairperson of SACNASP. Over to you, Gerda.
Thank you. Well, welcome, fellow food scientists. Although I'm wearing the SACNASP chairperson hat, my background is in food science, and it is the VA I'm associating myself with and with whom I'm registered. So, just a short introduction. SACNASP vision is to be the lead the development and advancement of the natural science professions in South Africa. And the natural science professions are structured in 25 fields of practice, of which food science is then only one. And the Council's strategic focus can further be summarized in 3 areas: that of registering scientists, to play an enabling role, and also to be an advisor. And I just want to highlight the last two functions in terms of the enabling role. With respect to a recent report that actually was shared with us, it's on the next generation of scientists in Africa. They list quite a couple of interesting factors, and the scientists rank the factors that are very important to them. And one interesting one is the lack of training opportunities to develop professional skills. And that's where I think SACNASP can really play a very important role. And my colleagues will share with you just now in terms of what is available to the scientist. And then furthermore, in terms of enabling, I think it must be acknowledged or mentioned to you the role of the link between government, industry, and all the stakeholders. And SACNASP are being heard at the highest level. About 3 weeks ago, I had a meeting with Minister Kubani, the Minister of Science and Technology, with her advisors, and we were able to share a number of challenges and issues that SACNASP can play a role in, and that we're trying to communicate to her. So with that being said, I just want to hand you over to our CEO, Dr. Pradesh Ramprasad, who will share more of the details and the workings of SACNASP. Pradesh, please.
Thank you, Dr. Botha. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar, and thank you for taking the time to join us. It is also an interesting experience for us doing this for the first time. And so what we're going to do running through the program, we are going to cover a few slides where we're going to talk in general to SACNASP and CPD. Then Ms. Sarah van Aert will take over, and we'll then go into more detail specifically on entering a CPD points, which I believe was a concern from a lot of scientists. We thereafter will move on to a Q&A session and allow you the opportunity to talk to us and see what is the issues that are concerning you. Okay, so without further ado, I will now run through a few slides. Okay, what you obviously see in front of you is my presentation. And the important starting point is the fact that SACNASP, as you're aware, is the statutory body established under the Natural Science Professions Act, and we are the accounting authority to implement this act. And we are under the Department of Science and Technology, that's the oversight. So the truth of the matter is that this is a regulator that we actually are talking to, and but over and above that, as Dr. Botha mentioned, we are moving further to be an enabler to science. The purpose of the Act is to provide for credible professional registration and regulatory body for the natural science to establish and direct, sustain, and ensure a high level of professionalism and ethical behavior in the natural science professional sector, and also to improve the standards of services rendered by our scientists, to maintain their integrity, to enhance the status, and to manage liabilities attendant to in the practice of natural science. So that's the purpose of why we have created this Act. Now, what I need to show you further going on is that we have 25 fields of practice, and of course food science, as you'll be aware, is one of them. But as the national regulator for science, natural science, there are an extensive number of fields of practice that we have that we need to regulate. These fields of practice are adjusted from time to time. They are added to, they are removed from. It is obviously the council that works directly with the Minister of Science and Technology to finalize this list. Okay, now moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, you would see there are a list of voluntary associations that SACNASP actually are aligned to SACNASP, and as you would see that the South African Association for Food Science and Technology is one of them. And of course, I myself am a member of the South African Chemical Institute. That's why I highlighted that. But there are 52 of these associations, of which SAAFoST is just one, as you can see. But of course, we assist and manage and help every one of them. There's a few more, just for your information. You can see the South African Society for Horticultural Science, the South African Society for Microbiology, and of course, we assist all of these organizations in terms of CPD and development of their scientists in their specific fields. So without much ado, let's go directly into the area of concern, and that is the continuing professional development. Now, just some background information, as Dr. Botha was mentioning earlier. A survey conducted among the natural scientists practicing in South Africa revealed that their top 3 preferences in a work environment are professional training and development, leaders who support their development, and of course, innovation. And I think what's important is the continuous professional development speaks directly to the professional training and development. And I think we all as scientists need to ensure that even 20 years after we get our degrees, that we are up to date with the latest information. And of course, talent acquisition and retention is crucial for the success of any business worldwide. And registration of practicing natural scientists like SACNASP is one of the mechanisms to assist industry and commerce. Now, what we're saying here is that by us getting our scientists registered with SACNASP, ensuring that they comply with the continuous professional development, assisting them in terms of their careers, this is what's very important for us to grow as individuals and as scientists in terms of our fields of practice. Now, the next slide speaks in general to a model of what we'd call the competent scientist. And this model, of course, is one that Council has actually, to a large extent, accepted and said we need to obviously work on developing our scientists in all of these areas. And this speaks to the fact that scientists throughout their careers are not necessarily going to remain scientists in a laboratory. They are, from time to time, moving to other areas. They're going to become managers. They've become sometimes directors of companies. And so the more complete picture is very important. If you think about a chief director in government, this individual will be sitting behind a desk and taking a decision that involves science, but he or she needs to still be actively involved in science. So the model speaks to appropriate training at the right level. And by that, obviously, in terms of being a scientist in South Africa, in terms of professionalism, at least a 4-year qualification. Adequate and relevant work experience. Now, why we say adequate and relevant, of course, the work experience needs to speak to the appropriate training. So there has to be a link between the two. Well-developed communication skills. This is one of the challenges we find with a lot of our younger scientists. They of course, find themselves in a situation where they've written a master's degree, but when they go to a company or a work environment, lots of comments are related to, but hang on a second, can the scientist actually write a report? And it's not that they can't write a report, maybe they don't understand the communication or the language of communication in that environment. So well-developed communication skills speaks directly to that aspect, being able to present your work at the right level to the right people. Strategic and management skills, and this speaks to our scientists having a greater impact on the business of where they are. Strategy, understanding what's going on in terms of the business planning is critically important. You need to work in a management type structure. You need to work in a strategic structure. And of course, going forward, ethical behavior and aware of legislation. Now, legislation, of course, I don't need to speak about that to this group of scientists. You're all fully aware that the food science area is very regulated. And as such, every food scientist needs to be aware of what's the relevant legislation. What are the changes in the legislation? What are the policies? What are the practices? What do you need to know? What do you need to not do, especially in terms of working in your field of practice? And of course, ethical behavior is very crucial. That speaks to our code of conduct. And a general statement, high attention to detail and quality of work. Of course, that speaks to all of us. That speaks to our work culture. That work speaks to how we walk into an environment and ensure we deliver what is necessary. Now, the Continuing Professional Development Program was launched on the 1st of April 2017. And in order to comply with the SACNASP CPD policy, registered scientists need to accumulate 25 CPD points over a 5-year period in order to be eligible for re-registration. At this point, I want to just add, a lot of scientists are very concerned. I have not entered my CPD points for the last year or so. It's fine, you can go back and you can enter those points. What if I did a very important program or attended a very important conference in the year before April 2017? Fine, please, you're welcome to add it in if you feel it's important. What is very important as a general statement is that you're a scientist in your field. You know what's important to your field. If you feel you need to enter those points, you enter it because you need to defend it. And of course, these points are gained through a number of activities, as we say, attending conferences, belonging to a voluntary association, assisting SACNASP as a referee or a member of a committee. But generally, it speaks to your involvement in science. What are you doing in terms of your science? Of course, we are hosting networking sessions around South Africa to address the concerns of registered scientists. And please, we ask of you to join us wherever possible. The next one, I think, is on the 5th in Mpumalanga. Is that correct? Yes. So there's one coming up on the 5th of December in Mpumalanga. And next year, we will have a few more. One of the events we're going to be at very soon is Science Forum 2018. So you're welcome to come join us there. And of course, we can chat. A little bit about the actual categories. You have the compulsory category, the development activities. This speaks to your attendance at conferences. This speaks to your direct training in your field of practice. This speaks directly to your exposure in terms of your science. Of course, then there's the category 2, which is your work-based activities. For those of you who are working in the field, of course, you need to have, you accumulate credits for working directly in the field. And if you are a mentor, well, there's additional credits on hand over here. And then category 3 speaks to individual activities. And if you go to the SACNASP website, you will be able to download the CPD policy. And what is important about this is that this speaks to what you are doing. So if you did a particular course or conference or program which is not listed on the SACNASP website for CPD points, but you believe it's important, you add it in. This is your space. Obviously, membership of your voluntary association, the fact you're a member of SAAFoST already has given you 1 point a year. So if you are a member of SAAFoST for the 5 years, you've already got 5 of the 25 points. So it's not that difficult to accumulate as you go further. And what are we speaking about? We're speaking about a lifetime commitment. There's continuous professional development. There's, of course, your profession, and there is SACNASP. And we are saying that as a scientist, you need to be continuously committed to your continuous professional development to ensure you're always relevant to your field of practice. Of course, there's a little bit about the candid mentoring program, and what is important about this, it actually speaks to development towards that, what we say is a competent scientist. So I won't go too much into detail here. It's just to give you a quick picture. What is very interesting here, of course, technology and IT skills is actually a very important point. What's happening in our fields of practice today? We are hearing lots of comments that a lot of the jobs that we know of today will not exist 10, 20 years from now. And if it's going to be an information technology age tomorrow, nothing stops any of us taking the time to understand what is the technology changes that we need to be aware of. Emotional intelligence and soft skills. This speaks to us as being scientists. Sometimes we lack that a little bit. And I'm not saying in general, I'm talking about myself as a scientist, but the point of the matter is that we need to develop these skills. We need to be able to communicate with people. This is what the world is saying that has to be developed in terms of us surviving going forward. And we spoke about the communication, we spoke about the legal aspect, and of course the business management and the technical competencies in the field. So just so you're aware of what this is about. Just a statement so you're aware, this came from our president earlier this year. His Excellency, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, stated, "We urge professional bodies and regulatory authorities to take action against members who are found to have acted improperly and unethically." So yes, the president is saying to us, there are professional bodies out there, there are regulatory authorities out there, and members need to behave in accordance. And I think compliance with our CPD program is an important step in the right direction. Just some general information, so that if you wish to register at SACNASP, of course, you're welcome to go to our website and you follow the steps. But I will stop at this point, and I would like to now say thank you very much for my presentation. I'd like to hand you over to Ms. Sarah van Aert. Ms. Sarah van Aert actually is the operations manager at SACNASP, and she will now run you through how do you actually enter your CPD points. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That's fine. That's fine.
The original website.
The original website. Okay, okay, so ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to try to get you onto the SACNASP website. So we're going to do a search and pull out the SACNASP website. We're taking you through the steps.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to navigate a little bit first around our website so that you can look at where you apply online, where you download our documents. And also, I just want to introduce you to our contact page so that if you need to contact someone at SACNASP, you know where to go. So it's www.sacnasp.org.za. This is our homepage. If you wish to apply, you can either apply online, and that's the application form there. This will take you through the system electronically, and it's quite an efficient system of getting through onto our database. If you apply online, we'll only ask you for original or hard copies of the documentation if we can't read it. So if it's a cleared scanned document, we won't need to ask you for any other documents. If you apply manually with the application form, which you can download here, we will expect the copy of the application form plus all of the relevant documents to be posted to us. If you go here, which is our contact page, it's quite important when you communicate with us that you know who you're communicating with. So if you have a problem in registration, the first thing we would like you to do is just send us an email with your registration number or your ID number or your reference number. Every single person who's applied for registration with us is associated with a particular member of staff. If you really are not getting any help from the email, their contact numbers are also here. And if you scroll further down, I'm just struggling to scroll down. Let me just.
You can't see that is in the way there, so you need to somehow try to. There we are. So you click on that part.
Okay.
Sorry about
So
that.
if you have problems with your invoices or your problems with payments, you need to contact finance, and those numbers are also here. But I'm going back to the home page. And while we're talking about websites, we are updating our website quite significantly. And it is a little bit fragmented at the moment. You'll find CPD here, you'll find a login here, and there's the other CPD is where the service providers must validate that material. That'll be here. But if you are uploading your portfolio, you actually need to scroll down to the middle, and it says all new CPD website, and then you just click here. So your registration number, and your ID number is your password. If you can't log in for any reason, sometimes there are errors with the ID number in our database. you'll just have to ring us and let us know. We can update your ID if things have changed or if there was a typo, and it takes 24 hours to sync. So I've logged on to Dr. Rampersaad's portfolio. So you have a dashboard. And here you have everything, your CPD portfolio, you have your number of credits. This quadrant here in the left-hand corner is your SACNASP documents, which we upload. And then there's the events and any other SACNASP information. But what's important to you is your CPD portfolio. So you click on continue. Now, Dr. Rampersaad has already done this. You need to just update your field of practice. So when you get to this section, there's a drop-down arrow, and you just click on your correct field of practice. And that creates, so we've created chemical science for Dr. Rampersaad. And then it pulls up the 3 categories. So there's category 1, which we've talked about, the developmental activities, category 2, work-based activities, and category 3, individual activities. So category 1. These are activities that have been accredited by SACNASP. So you need to search for your activity using this drop-down menu. So I'm struggling a bit with that. Right, so there's a lot of activities in here, and you can also search using, what did you attend?
The Northwest.
So we have the Northwest networking session, which was attended. So this was an event which was accredited by us. And a lot of the information then is already filled in. It has a validation number. You will have to just take the date from the certificate that you received and fill everything in there. You then will receive, if it's an accredited event, you will have received a certificate. At this point, you'll need to upload the evidence of your event. Any accredited event has a certificate that you will need to upload here. If it's a non-credited event, you can either which won't be here, which will be in category 3, which I'll talk about later. You will need to just upload an attendance register or even the little badge that you receive when you attend the event. So you can either save and close, or cancel. So we're going to save and close. Oh, we haven't filled in all the dates. So we're going to cancel that for now because we're going to update it later. So category 2. There's 2 ways of accumulating points in this section. One is science-related work. This is pretty much just attending work. We would just require a copy of either your work contract or a letter from HR or some evidence that says that you attend work. And then you will get 2 CPD points, 1 point for every 400 hours attended. The other way to obtain points is through mentoring people. SACNASP really values the mentoring of younger scientists. So if you have a formal or informal mentoring process, you can just update it in here. And again, you'll need to manually fill in a lot of this. So the dates, the name of the mentee, the credits that you're claiming. And if you have a formal process, you will just need to update the mentoring program form that your organization uses. And then the final one is individual activities. So we talked a little bit earlier on about how you can get individual points. The first one is being a member of SAAFoST, and you will gain 1 point per year for that membership. You will need to also upload your certificate of registration or of membership. So again, down at the bottom, you add your file, and then you save and close. And then the final one for individual activities is anything else. And this, as Doctor said earlier, it's really about what you feel that you are doing to enhance science. So we often advertise on our website. We look for people who can assist us with outreach. We've asked some people to help us with some videos, but it's not always that. It's the work that you do. If you publish, if you do posters at events, if you're a referee, that's also very important. Anything that you think may be science related or helping someone within the science community. And again, as was stated earlier, you will need to, each CPD portfolio is 10% of all portfolios are audited. So as long as you can justify what you've done and that you believe that it is, you can claim a point for it, then there should be no concerns. So that's really the CPD portfolio and how you update it. And I think that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah and Dr. Ramprasad and Dr. Botha. We'll now be moving on to question and answer time. So basically, if you'd like to ask a question, all you need to do is raise your hand on the little control panel on the right, and I will unmute you so that you can speak to the group.
Thank you.
We have received one question online, which I can perhaps read out to you. The one of our members has asked if she's registered with SACNASP and she immigrates to another country, can she remain a member?
Yes, that is not a concern. There's quite a few of our scientists, especially in the area of geological science, that are employed and work in different countries. We're finding it very interesting that a lot of international companies are actually recognizing SACNASP registration, especially in the mining sector into Africa. They are recognizing that. So, of course, yes, it means you still comply with the code of conduct and you still have to comply with the CPD requirements, but you submit your evidence online. And of course, yes, you can remain a member of SACNASP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from anybody? Okay, we're just checking for online questions.
Not a problem.
Okay, we have one. If I attend a non-SACNASP registered event, like, for an example, a demonstration of technology at a private enterprise, how could this be formalized? Do I have to ask my host to give me some form of document?
That, of course, is the preferable situation. Yes, of course, we can, frankly speaking, not all events attended by our scientists will be accredited by SACNASP. A lot of people attend company events. They work for certain companies. There's in-house training, in-house events, all of which is of direct relevance to their field of practice. Sometimes it's small service providers who maybe were contracted in by the company, obviously, to attend it. To present something. It is preferable that you try to have some evidence of attending this event. Now, sometimes not everyone's going to issue you with a certificate of attendance, and that we appreciate, but at least the documentation that was sent to you originally that speaks to what the event is about, what is the, even if it was the pamphlet that was given to you. Of course, remember, you're bound by a code of conduct. So being bound by a code of conduct means that there's a degree of integrity from yourself that we have to trust. So in other words, if you come to us and say, I've attended this event, here's a pamphlet, we have to trust that what you said is correct. But at the same time, when I say that, when you have evidence, especially if you are being audited by a group of scientists, it's important that you do have some sort of evidence in relation to what you are saying. It's similar to when you apply to SACNASP. You do need to include a bit about your background, your work experience, your qualifications. It's the same idea. And just to move a little further on that topic of auditing, how does this work? What is very important, what I need to say to our scientists out there, is that when you reach the end of the 5-year window period, and of course, you have not achieved, say, for argument's sake, the 25 CPD points, SACNASP is not going the next day just shut you down and say, sorry, that's the end of your registration with SACNASP. You will be given an opportunity to try to close the gap as quickly as possible, of course, and you need to defend why or what it is that happened. But furthermore, in terms of us auditing you as a scientist in terms of CPD, our processes are such that the people who are going to sit across and talk to you about your CPD points are going to be food scientists, professional food scientists. They're going to be colleagues of yours. So SACNASP is not going to create some sort of system that where you're going to feel uncomfortable about talking about your field of practice. It's going to be scientists talking to scientists. So in reality, when you attend an event, when you do something that's not necessarily on the SACNASP website, say for example, an international conference, which is of direct relevance to your field of practice. Of course, what's going to happen is that you need to defend this to your scientists. You need to defend this to your group of peers. You need to say that this was important for these reasons. And why I'm bringing this up is that if it's not on the website, it does not mean you will not be credited for CPD points for attending it. You will, and you need to defend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rampersad. Okay, we have a question now from our group. Nigel Sunny, please would you go ahead and ask your question?
Right, good afternoon. Thanks, Dr. Rampersad, for a good presentation. It's certainly clarifying things. I've got a couple of queries regarding the status of various activities for CPD purposes. A SAAFoST specific one, SAAFoST holds a lot of speaker evenings. Some of them are very, obviously fairly social in nature, and I wouldn't expect those to count towards CPD points. But for those speaker evenings, you know, where we have a formal scientific lecture, how are those sorts of typically handled from the point of CPD eligibility, and both in terms of the points that you get and also in terms of the documentation that you need to substantiate those? That's my first question.
Okay, obviously, okay, just to answer your question in two parts. The first part is, let's just say you are a presenter at a scientific event, okay? If you're presenting a scientific paper, part of the evidence would be obviously the program that says that you are the presenter on this, and if need be, even a copy of the paper if it's open information. And I appreciate the fact that some of us are not going to be able to just reveal everything openly. But so long as whatever you can is whatever is open, whatever you can share with whoever is evaluating, it's important that you have that as evidence. Where you are, say, a guest at a presentation, again, once more, the invite for the presentation is important. Of course, what is very important is that in terms of these points, you got to remember it's actually, if you do a presentation on a scientific topic of direct relevance to your field of practice, it's a category 1 event. If you attended the presentation, again, that's of direct relevance, it is again a category 1 event that you have attended. So long as it's accredited, of course, in terms of that. But again, as I say, if you feel that you have attended such an event and you want to defend it, you're welcome to defend it. So basically, if you are a presenter at a scientific conference or scientific event, yes, you will get your CPD points for that. Thank you.
My second question relates to pro bono academic activities. I mean, certainly in my case, and I think a number of other people, we're self-employed, we're consultants, but we do a certain amount of formal academic work, which is usually unpaid, and we do it on a pro bono basis. Is there any provision in terms of CPD for this sort of activity?
Yes. Frankly, as I say, if it is, it's either category 1 or category 3. The reality is that if you are giving lectures in your field of practice, that to me is a category 1 event, even if it's pro bono. If it's, say, to school kids, of course, you are doing community service in science, that's a category 3 event. If it's part and parcel of your work commitment, then you claim category 2 in terms of working hours. So yes, in fact, the truth of the matter is, if it's serving science in South Africa, if it's serving science in some form or the other, it's either if you are increasing your knowledge in science, if you're adding value in science, these are CPD events. You are talking science and you are involved in science, and that's what we are looking for. That we as scientists are making a difference out there, making a contribution out there, and that's where you would get your CPD points. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just throw one extra thing in here for purposes of general information? I realize that it's absolutely impossible to cater for every conceivable potential activity. I mean, one has to look at a lot of these things on an ad hoc basis, and I fully understand that. But I think some form of summary list of typical activities and what sort of CPD eligibility there would be in terms of number of points in relation to the amount of activity or type of activity involved would be very, very helpful. And I fully understand it would have to be issued really as a guideline document, because it could not be the definitive answer. I think this would be very helpful, particularly to those of us who have a lot of different types of activities. That's certainly my situation. And for a lot of SACNASP people operating as consultants, we tend to be jack of all trades. And I think something like this would be very helpful, but I realize you don't want to compromise things too much by making too many firm commitments.
No, thank you very much for that suggestion. We will definitely work on that. You're right. We are working. You see, the CPD program is also designed to be a bit generic. Generic in the sense that we have all the different fields of practice, as we mentioned, and of course there are activities that you need to be involved in, that you are involved in, and we respect that. We will obviously work on a guideline, as you suggested, that makes it a bit more clearer. And I think you're right. Maybe it will help a few scientists to just give them an idea of what kind of activities. But at the end of the day, I think the most important point of the matter is that if the activity involves science, then it's most likely eligible for CPD points. Okay, thank you very much for the suggestion.
Thank you, Nigel. Then moving on, we have a question from Ursula Rundgren. Ursula, please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I'd just like to find out from you, thank you. Industry typically takes on a number of students throughout the year to do their in-service training. Would the mentors for those students doing their in-service training then qualify for mentorship points?
Simple, yes, you would. Because obviously it is part and parcel of your company in-house processes, but you are a scientist and you are a professional in your field of practice, and you have done it as part of your career and part of your work commitments. You claim your CPD points accordingly. So definitely yes.
Thank you, Ursula. We have another question from Owen Frisbee. Owen, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Dr. Prasad.
G'day, Owen, how are you?
Fine, thank you, and yourself. Congratulations on a very good first attempt to you and Sarah.
No, thank you very much. We appreciate what you created.
I just wanted to raise two questions. First thing is that the food industry is hugely multidisciplinary, and I was wondering whether any other scientific fields were quite as broad as this, because we get queries from all sorts of people and all sorts of activities that must be fairly unique. And one question that I would like to raise is, I often have queries from the media wanting to speak to professionals on the air. And this is actually a very important way for scientists like, for example, Nigel, who was speaking earlier, to communicate with the whole country on very serious issues. And I just want to mention that this is a thing that we are confronted with all the time, and that we should mention that this has CPD value also, because it might be unique in the various fields of practice in this regard.
Owen, thank you very much for that. Firstly, when you speak about the aspect of multidisciplinary, yes, there are other fields of practice where we find this happens, and what we as SACNASP are very careful of is fragmentation of a field of practice to all the subunits, simply because end of the day, if you are qualified in the field of practice and you operate in that field of practice, the most important point for us all to remember as scientists is if you take a decision of quality and safety in your field of practice, you need to ensure that you have the relevant training and experience to be able to take that decision. And that is what I think is the first line of defense. So even, of course, if you are speaking to the media, as you say, obviously as an expert in a particular area, that you've got to be sure before you get onto the air that the area and the subject matter you are comfortable with, and in terms of the fact of your training and your background, that you can defend this, that you know that you are an expert in that area. And in terms of CPD points, it's correct. What you are doing is you are now educating the national public on an aspect of science, which is very crucial. And so obviously I would see that as a category 3 event, and there's absolutely no reason why you cannot claim your CPD points in that regard. So Owen, the important point from my perspective in this regard is that you as a scientist need to ensure that the value add in terms of science is actually clearly understood by everyone out there, and that in the process, of course, that you will, as I say, benefit of a point or two, but you need to defend that to your colleagues. And I would say any national media event where you speak to science and speak to the subject matter is crucial.
Just one other point then, I think it might be useful in these interviews, which can take a lot of time in preparation and also in planning, because these people always come to you at the last moment. But maybe at the outset to mention that you are a registered natural scientist, because there are lots of people who talk on the radio that are not that credible. So we are being measured by what we say, but the others aren't. So it might be an important point to remember when you are being interviewed.
That's actually a very valid point, and thank you so much for that, Owen. I think you said it totally correctly. It's actually very interesting that once when we were talking to one of the vice chancellors of one of the universities, the comment brought to our attention was actually for them as an academic institution, the important point of professional registration is that of risk mitigation for companies. And so they said straight out, they need their people registered who are practicing out there, who are out there making, of course, doing work for the community, doing work beyond just sitting in the classroom and teaching. And this speaks exactly to that same point, that you need people to know you're a professional scientist, you're a professionally registered scientist. You have been evaluated by a group of peers who are in the same field of practice. You are compliant with your CPD points. So in other words, it shows that you are actually up to date. You are bound by a code of conduct. So this is what gives people confidence in you as a scientist. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Another question from our attendees, Nandeepa Marareni. Over to you, Nandeepa.
Good afternoon. I would like to, yes, okay. So basically this is, we're not very clear about the SACNASP. What is it about? Yes.
Yeah.
And also I wanted to find out, is it compulsory for everybody in the food industry to register with this organization? And then the second question is that the CPD points, how do you achieve them? And do you register, if you do register as a company or do you register as an individual?
Okay. Nandeepa, thank you very much for your questions. Firstly, as I indicated, SACNASP is the Registration Regulation Authority for Natural Science in South Africa. So we are created by an Act of Parliament. And that being the case, it's a directive from government that any natural scientist who is practicing in a field of practice that is recognized in terms of the Natural Science Act, it has to be registered with this council. Now, if you would look at the government gazette, and I think, hang on a second, let me just quickly see if I can pull this up for you, this particular slide. Sorry, it ran away. As you would see, food science is a recognized field of practice in terms of, sorry, that thing ran away again, in terms of the natural sciences in South Africa. So it means that if you're a practicing natural scientist in food sciences, you need to be registered with SACNASP. Now, that being said, In terms of yourself, in terms of how you register for your CPD points, it's not a company that would register for CPD points. It is actually an individual, because we regulate individuals. So you as a person is bound by the code of conduct, not your company. You need to ensure compliance with the code of conduct. You need to ensure you're practicing as a scientist in your recognized field of practice. So in terms of your CPD, yes, you need to register for CPD as an individual, not the company. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nandipa. One more question from our attendees. I'll hand you over to Dr. Vusi Mshayisa.
Okay.
Dr. Vusi?
Hi, thank you for the wonderful presentation. I just have a question on basically, will there be a criteria that will be used to evaluate the mentoring that is provided, especially with academics, where we supervise a lot of students throughout the years? So if one just supervises a student, even if the student is not of a high standard, will that still count? Is there criteria to evaluate the quality of mentorship and supervision that is provided for students? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Vusi, for this question. In terms of criteria for evaluating, especially with regard to the quality of the work, what we actually currently are doing in terms of the candidate mentoring program, we are developing policies and procedures, and that will also include quality requirements and aspects. So in terms of your question, if of course it is not so much exactly the quality of, as you said, in terms of a person, it is more a case of what we would look at in terms of quality is we'll set certain guidelines. Like, for example, we'll say there has to be so many hours of contact between you and the candidate for this window period. We will set certain other criteria, like we'll indicate to you when you evaluate your candidate, you need to assist us specifically, and I'll quickly go to a slide over here that so that I can show you what some of the thoughts that we have. Okay. For example, we'll ask you as a scientist, can you assist me in terms of emotional intelligence and soft skills, technology and IT skills, written and verbal communication skills, legal ethical training? Where are the gaps with this candidate? And if possible, we need to assist this candidate if there's an opportunity to ensure that the candidate fills in these gaps. So these are the other areas that we would look at. There will be a few other guidelines in terms of how we would look upon the candidate mentoring program. But as I say, this is still work in progress. For now, obviously, whatever you are doing in terms of your candidate mentoring program, we obviously will respect if you can defend it. We appreciate there are companies out there that have structured programs, which means that we will not really be able to get them to change it very easily. But of course, what we will do where there is a substantial deviation on that program compared to what we are doing, we may engage the company and talk to them about specifically how or why we think certain aspects of the program should be changed or modified. But at the same time, of course, we respect the fact that certain companies have specialized programs for specific requirements within the business environment. Thank you.
Thank you both doctors. Then on to some online questions. Are we going to receive registration certificates?
Your registration certificates.
Certificates, yes.
Okay. All right. Let me put it this way. I'll answer it not totally clear on the question, but let me say, if you're a registered scientist, yes, you do get a certificate. That certificate is issued once a year because it has an expiry date. You need to pay your registration fees annually. In terms of CPD, will you get a certificate in terms of CPD compliance? That's something we need to look at. We were actually discussing something of the sort, a CPD certificate. Okay, sorry, Sarah van Aert, who's the person who knows the system far better than me, and said you actually can print out a CPD certificate from the system. So that is also available. I remember we were talking about it at one stage, but of course that already has been done.
Thank you, Doctor. Then if you've lost your accreditation after not working in the field for a few years, how do you get your accreditation back?
Okay, there could be more than one way of looking at it. If you're not working in the field of practice, firstly, you will not necessarily automatically lose your accreditation if you make an effort to ensure compliance with the CPD points. Now, what you would find is category 2 speaks specifically, let me just go back there and I can find that. There we are. Category 2 speaks specifically to work-based activities. 400 hours equal 1 CPD point. Now, what would happen to someone who's not, say, working in science? And I'll use myself as an example as being someone working, say, as an administrator of a regulatory council. So I'm not directly involved in science. So it's difficult for me to claim these points. But I can get points by mentoring. I can get points by attending development activities, and I can get individual points, membership of my voluntary association. So even if you're not directly working in that field of practice, it is still quite straightforward for you to gain CPD points for you to be able to be recognized in terms of the CPD requirements. If, however, what has happened is you have lapsed your registration, which is a slightly different issue. If you contact SACNASP, I think within a period of, I think it's 2 years, I think the process is a little more straightforward. They can reinstate you. But if it goes beyond a certain window, and I'm not totally clear on the window, but I'll have to investigate that, they may require that you reapply for registration, because what would happen in that case is that your work experience over the last few years will not be recorded in terms of the sciences. So you need to then justify your work experience in that regard. So I would say the important point is, if you have lapsed your registration, you're welcome to contact SACNASP and say, okay, I was a registered scientist, I've lapsed my registration for these reasons, I need to be reinstated. Of course, we will look at it and see how we can assist you. And as I say, we're all scientists like you, so we also will try to find solutions to assist our scientists. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much. I think then for our last question before we close, this comes from a foreign postgraduate student working in South Africa. What does the association have for people in my category? Foreign postgraduate students in South Africa.
Okay. You see, the truth of the matter is that in terms of, say, if the person wants to apply for a work visa, I think critical skills visa, normally that's what the process normally entails. The Department of Home Affairs does indicate that you do need to be, you need to fall into the category that's one of the categories that's regarded as being critical skills, and therefore you would obviously have to be evaluated against that, and that's where SACNASP obviously plays a role. But also even as a foreign work, what you call this, let me get the words right, as a foreign postgraduate student working in South Africa at some point, registration with a professional authority in any country gives you recognition wherever you go. It shows that you have been evaluated by your peers, even in South Africa, although you're not from South Africa originally, to be meeting the criteria to be a professional scientist in your field. You have complied with the continuous professional development requirements, and that is a ticket to whenever you go anywhere in the world, that you will be recognized in terms of the fact that you've reached a certain level and status in terms of your career. And that obviously is a window that opens doors for you. I mean, when we actually go to conferences, and this is very interesting, I actually was one day having a discussion with a particular student, postgraduate student, who was not South African, not based in South Africa, never studied in South Africa, and just came for the conference only. But he wants to register with SACNASP. And I asked him why. He says, well, in my country, SACNASP registration is recognized by the industries out there for me to get employment. So just to give you an idea as to how it works. So if you are here and got the opportunity to register with this council, it is an opportunity for you to gain recognition. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Dr. Ramprasad. Just for those that have asked questions, we are running out of time, so we do need to close now. But what will happen is after, in the next couple of days, we will share a Q&A document with all attendees that registered for the event with the questions and the answers. So you will get those answers. And then I think it's just a matter of us now closing up. Dr. Ramprasad, for your closing comments.
Okay, firstly, to the attendees, and I noticed that basically almost all of you all stayed for the entire process. Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity that you gave us to speak to you and address your concerns. From a SACNASP perspective, remember, we are very approachable. If you have any questions, any queries, anything that you need assistance with, we are more than willing to assist you. End of the day, SACNASP has a simple philosophy of being an enabler. So we want to enable science. We want to enable your field of practice. We want to enable you as a scientist. So of course, please speak to us. And also from my perspective, I'd like to thank Dr. Kara Botha, obviously our chairperson, who took the time to join us. Apologies, she has had to leave a little bit early because she had another event to attend. And of course, Ms. Sarah van Aert, who is our CPD specialist, who took the time to explain to you all how the system worked. Sarah, can I hand over to you? And maybe you can say a few words.
Hi, yes, thank you all for staying here, and thank you, SAAFoST, for hosting this event for us. And if you do have queries, if you've got any questions, just please contact either myself or Linky Morgano, who's also sitting in the room, and we will attend to any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of our speakers and to all of you who took the time to attend this first SAAFoST SACNASP session. We look forward to presenting many more webinars in the future. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi.
Bye.
Bye. I think it went well. Congrats.
Are we out?
Are we done?
Are we done?
We're done.
We're done. Oh, great, Joe. Thank you so much to yourself and Owen and his team for arranging this. We really appreciated the opportunity. We're glad we could add value.
Thank you so much. I think it went well and everything was well organized. Thank you, Joel. Thanks, Dr. Rampersad, Sarah, for all the effort and all everything that went into it.
No, it's only a pleasure. And we're willing to do this anytime. As I say, we just talk to each other. And it was the first experience for us, but I think from here also it teaches a trick or two to assist the other voluntary associations who may require something similar. So I think we need to also investigate that going forward.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you all very much. We'll be in contact.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.